Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking, well, a truly ambitious intellectual journey.
Recently ambitious.
We're taking two massive, seemingly completely different systems, ancient Eastern philosophy on one side, modern Western psychological science on the other, and we're going to map them onto each other. And the mapping is, well, it's startlingly precise. If you've ever had that feeling, that there must be some kind of hidden, unified blueprint for the human mind, something that spans cultures and time, then this deep dive is absolutely for you.
Yeah, that suspicion is exactly what our sources are digging into. We're not just looking for, vague similarities here.
No, not at all.
We're unpacking a really detailed philosophical argument, and it proposes a direct, cohesive blueprint shared by both systems. It's quite a claim.
It really is.
This argument basically says that the way Western psychological thought developed, its evolution from behaviorism right up to thinking about transcendence, that whole trajectory precisely mirrors the layers of awareness laid out thousands of years ago in Mahayana Buddhist doctrine.
So our mission today is to synthesize these very specific concordance arguments. We're diving deep into the 9 consciousnesses, or Citta Dharma. This comes from the Mahayana Yogacara school. That's the famous consciousness-only school.
Right.
And we're going to systematically compare them against the 4 psychological forces developed in the West.
And those forces, just to recap, they basically summarize the big shifts in modern psychology. You start with John B. Watson's Behaviorism.
Force 1.
Then Freudian Psychoanalysis.
Force 2.
Then you get the broader Humanistic and Jungian psychology.
Force 3.
And finally, you reach Stan Grof's Transpersonal Psychology. Force 4.
The core idea, the premise we're exploring, is that the last 4, the highest Buddhist consciousnesses, that's Mano, Manas, Alaya, and Amala, they correspond perfectly to those 4 forces.
And it's not just like, oh, this one's kind of like that one. The argument is that it's a structural match, a revelation, really.
Yeah.
It offers us this integrated, kind of multidimensional view of the psyche, starting right down at simple sensory interaction and building all the way up to pure transcendent awareness.
Okay, so where do we start? Let's lay the groundwork with the Buddhist map first.
Yeah, that's good. Let's start there.
Okay, let's unpack the structure of this Yogacara system first. It's quite holistic.
Ready.
This school says that these 9 consciousnesses are responsible for, well, literally everything the mind-body system does. All activities.
Right. They don't work in isolation. They interact. The idea is they produce an integrated spiritual mind. And the system categorizes them across 5 distinct levels, each one getting deeper, more profound.
Okay, 5 levels. Level 1.
Level 1 is where we all start. It's the sensory foundation. This level deals only with the outer world, pure input.
So these are the first 5 consciousnesses.
Exactly. They are the channels, the essential, unfiltered pathways for communication, bilateral communication between the external environment, stimuli, and our internal mind. They just respond directly to raw input.
We're talking pure, immediate input here, like the physical senses.
Yeah. The 5 physical senses.
Yeah.
Eye consciousness, seeing, responding to light. Ear consciousness, hearing, responding to sound.
Nose consciousness for smelling, tongue consciousness for tasting.
And body consciousness for touching. For any tactile stimulus, they are the gateway, the basic receptors that make any experience possible at all.
Got it. The raw data feed.
But, and this is crucial, while these 5 are foundational, they are purely receptive. They just provide the data stream.
Okay.
If the system stopped right there, we'd just be, reacting biological machines. The real complexity, the human mind as we think of it, that begins when we move beyond these basic channels.
Into the higher level.
Into the 4 higher consciousnesses. Mano, that's the 6th. Manas, the 7th. Alaya, the 8th. And finally, Amala, the 9th.
And these 4 are the main focus for the concordance argument we're exploring today.
Absolutely. These are the sophisticated processors. They take that raw data and transform it into thoughts, ego, memories, and ultimately the potential for wisdom.
That division seems really key. Level 1 is the senses connecting to the world. Then level 2 and beyond is where the internal processing happens, where the comparison with Western psychology really takes off.
Exactly. So let's dive into that first stage of internal processing. Okay, diving into that first higher consciousness, we have Mano. That's the 6th consciousness, and it operates at level 2.
Level 2. And its job is?
Immediate processing. It works directly with the input received from those 5 sensory consciousnesses we just talked about. Level 1 feeds level 2.
So Mano takes the raw data, the sight, the sound, the touch, and what does he do with it?
Its fundamental function is synthesis. It takes the feelings, the sensations gathered by the 5 senses, and it synthesizes them. It pulls them together to form cohesive, thought, concept, and idea.
Okay, so without mono, the senses would just be delivering noise, basically. Unrelated bits of information.
Pretty much. Mono organizes it into something that feels meaningful, something coherent.
That makes sense why the sources call it the ideation consciousness, or sometimes the monkey consciousness, right?
Yeah, exactly. That constant chatter, the mind jumping from one thing to the next, engaging with whatever is immediately happening, that's mono.
And it's also called one of the twin minds, along with manas.
Yes, they work very closely together in shaping our immediate experience. We'll get to manas next. But focusing on mono, functionally, it's described as non-equanimous.
Non-equanimous, meaning?
Meaning it lacks stability,
Yeah.
emotionally and perceptually. It's easily swayed, reactive. It doesn't have the deep calm of the higher consciousnesses.
Okay. And is there a brain link mentioned in the sources?
Yes, interestingly, the materials link mono primarily to the right brain. This suggests a connection to its role in synthetic processing, pulling things together, organizing the overall input. Though broadly, it corresponds to the full brain because it handles input from all the senses.
Right. So processing sensory input, forming ideas, a bit unstable, right brain associated. Now, how does this connect to Western psychology? This is the first concordance.
This is where it clicks immediately. Mono is argued to be equivalent to Watson's behaviorism, the first psychological force.
Behaviorism.
Yeah.
Focusing entirely on observable, learned behaviors, things you acquire through positive or negative reinforcement from the outside world, reactions to stimuli.
Precisely. And the mapping is compelling because classical behaviorism, largely ignored what was happening inside the mind. It didn't care about unobservable mental processes.
It was all about stimulus and response. Black box in the middle.
Exactly. And since mono is the internal mechanism that filters and processes those raw sensory stimuli from level 1, turning them into ideas at level 2, well, it's the perfect internal counterpart to that external, observable framework of behaviorism.
So mono is the conscious function inside the black box that allows the external learned response to actually happen. It's the immediate cognitive link to the environment.
That's the argument. It facilitates that connection.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. If you're conditioning a response like Pavlov's dogs, ringing a bell, giving food, you're basically working directly with the sensory input that mono processes, creating a new link, a new idea.
You're essentially training mono to associate the bell sound idea with the food taste idea. Okay, now we move deeper into the psyche. We hit manas, the seventh consciousness. This operates at level 3.
Level 3, and this is a big jump, you said.
A massive philosophical leap, yeah.
Yeah.
Because manas deals with the inner spiritual world, specifically things like perception, cognition, volition or our will, and how we focus attention internally.
Okay. Inner world. And this is where the self comes into play, right? The ego.
Absolutely. Manas is actually called the self-consciousness, or mind consciousness. It is the very birthplace of the self or ego. The sources sometimes refer to it as 7 pos.
7 pos for seventh positive, or...
The sources don't specify the pose meaning, but it consistently refers to the ego function of the seventh consciousness. And crucially, it operates through what the Yogacara school calls diluted awareness.
Diluted awareness. Why diluted?
Because it receives input from level 1 senses and level 2 manas ideas, but it fundamentally misinterprets it. Manas is the consciousness defined by logic and obscuration. It draws lines. It creates the boundaries of I versus not I or other.
Okay, so if mono is just the monkey mind chattering away about the outside world, manas is the part of the mind that hears that chatter and says, hey, that chatter, that's mine, that's me, I exist.
Perfectly put. Precisely. And this is what leads to the core philosophical problem associated with manas. Its insistence on upadana.
Upadana.
Upadana. It means attaching, clinging, grasping. Manas is fundamentally characterized by this tenacious clinging to the idea of a separate, permanent, individual self.
It wants to hold on to that I.
Desperately. And this clinging, this deep desire to solidify the self, is what gives rise to the 4 fundamental kleshas.
The kleshas, afflictions, right? These sound important.
They are central. They define the human unenlightened state, according to this system. They are the direct result of manas's clinging.
Okay, let's unpack those kleshas, because you mentioned this maps really well to Freudian thought. So what are they, specifically?
Right. They're seen as the 4 great spiritual obscurations or poisons. First, you have ignorance or delusion. This is the basic failure to see the true nature of reality, its impermanence, its lack of inherent self.
Okay, delusion. What's next?
Second is Dislike or hatred. Aversion. This arises when we resist anything perceived as a threat to that self Manas has constructed.
Makes sense. If there's an I, then there's things that hurt I.
Exactly. Third is attachment or desire. The flip side. The insistence on grabbing and holding on to anything perceived as beneficial or pleasurable to the self.
Grasping.
And finally, number 4 is pride or ego. Just the sheer elevation and constant defense of that self-concept.
Wow. Ignorance, hatred, desire, pride.
The Yogacara argument is crystal clear. Whenever the mind of the ego, whenever Manas is operating, these 4 afflictions inevitably follow. They are part and parcel of its function.
Manas sounds like the psychological engine room for basically all our personal suffering, our neuroses, our conflicts. It seems defined by internal conflict caused by this grasping.
That's a very good way to put it. Now, let's look at the brain link mentioned for this. Well, this deeply problematic structure.
Yeah.
Manas, like mano, is non-equanimous, but its lack of balance is rational or logical. It gets stuck in its own constructs. And the sources state it's dominated by the left brain.
The left brain. That's really interesting.
It's a potentially profound correlation, isn't it? The left brain is generally associated with linear processing, logic, analysis, language, and critically dualism, thinking in terms of A versus not A.
Which are the very tools the ego uses to define itself, right? To draw boundaries, separate me from you, and cling to its definitions.
Precisely. The left brain's analytical separating function seems tailor-made for the manas consciousness, as described here.
So if the ego, defined by these kleshas, is powered maybe by the left brain's tendency towards dualistic logic, then the connection to the second psychological force,
Freudian psychoanalysis,
it becomes almost undeniable.
It really feels like a perfect fit. Freud's whole theory emphasizes the internal world, right? The conflict between the conscious mind and the unconscious. How our mental landscape, our neuroses, are shaped by early experiences, buried traumas.
All of which contribute to the formation and the function, and often the dysfunction, of the ego.
Exactly. Psychoanalysis, at its core, tries to understand and resolve the conflicts caused by the ego's clinging, its defenses, its underlying attachments and aversions, which map directly onto those kleshas.
It's a really remarkable parallel. It's like Western psychology identifies the clinical problem, the neuroses, the conflicts, the attachments. And thousands of years earlier, Buddhism identified the underlying structural consciousness, manas, that seems almost inherently designed to create that problem through its function of diluted awareness.
Yes. But this raises a really crucial, maybe challenging question, doesn't it?
Which is?
Well, if the core function of manas is clinging, if that's its nature, and a lot of Western therapy, especially historically, focused on strengthening the ego, building a stronger sense of self.
Right, making the ego more resilient, better adapted.
Is the goal of psychoanalysis or therapies like it fundamentally contradictory to the Buddhist goal, which is ultimately liberation from the self, from manas's grip?
That's a deep question. Are we just reinforcing the source of the problem?
That's precisely the philosophical tension this whole concordance idea brings right to the surface. It suggests that maybe strengthening the self can help with immediate psychological issues, pathology, but perhaps it doesn't address the ultimate spiritual pathology, which is upadana itself, the clinging.
Okay, so if mano and manas together define the sort of personal, immediate, ego-driven mind, the next stages in this deep dive seem to move into territory far beyond the individual self, starting with alaya.
Way beyond the individual, yes, the eighth consciousness, alaya. This one is immense, huge in its implications. It's known by a few names: the repository consciousness, the karmic concordance, or maybe most commonly the storehouse consciousness.
Storehouse. Okay, storing what?
Its storage capacity is described as limitless. It holds all the karma.
All of them?
All of them. The volitional actions, the mental formations, the tendencies created not just in this lifetime, but across all previous lifetimes as well.
Whoa. Okay, so this is like the deep memory, the permanent transpersonal record keeper for everything we've ever done or intended.
That's a good way to think of it. It's described as the eternally active consciousness that supports one's body, mind, and even the natural world around us. It operates through reflective awareness.
Reflective awareness.
Meaning it observes, it holds the information, but without the judgment or clinging of manas. However, it's still associated with ignorance.
Why ignorance if it's just reflecting?
Because if the overall mind is unenlightened, then the seeds, the karma stored within alaya, are inherently impure, or at least mixed. They carry the residue of past delusion and craving.
Got it. So the storage itself is neutral, but the content reflects our past state of ignorance. Now, our sources mention alaya forms something called the soul consciousness, or a temporary self, or seed.
Yes, that's a key concept. The quality of alaya is referred to simply as soul, and it's said to contain the three immortal hun. Hun. It's a term often associated with ethereal or spiritual aspects of the soul in some related traditions. The sources connect it here to the enduring quality of alaya.
So this soul in alaya is different from the ego in manas.
Absolutely vital distinction. The ego manas is the constructed, temporary I. The soul alaya is the deeper continuity thread, the carrier of karmic potential. And interestingly, alaya is said to reside primarily in the right brain.
Right brain again, like mano, but deeper.
Seems so, which aligns conceptually with its non-dualistic, holistic function, holding everything together, rather than dividing it like the left brain-associated manas.
And alaya supports the other consciousnesses.
Critically, it's the foundation. When outer awareness is lost, think deep sleep, under anesthesia, maybe even very deep meditation. Manas and the sensory consciousnesses might shut down, but alaya is the only consciousness that remains effective, either entirely or partially.
So it ensures continuity.
Exactly. Continuity of experience, the carrying forward of potential, even when the lights of the ego and senses are off.
And that continuity must be key to understanding the cycle of rebirth, Sasara.
Absolutely fundamental. Alaya is characterized by this circulation of life and death. It follows the unfolding chain of the 12 links of interdependent origination, that whole process of cause and effect that keeps the cycle going.
So rebirth isn't something separate from alaya.
No, the rebirth consciousness is explicitly described in the sources as the sentient, circulating ingredient within the alaya consciousness itself. It's the part of alaya that constantly supports the manifestation of future lifetimes, based entirely on the karmic seeds stored there. Alaya is the engine of Sasara.
Wow. Okay, a vast, transpersonal storehouse of karmic seeds driving rebirth, ensuring continuity beneath the ego. This sounds incredibly similar to the foundations of the third psychological force,
Which encompasses Maslow's humanistic psychology and, perhaps even more strongly, Jung's psychodynamic psychology.
Right. How does this colossal storehouse map onto Jung specifically?
Well, the alignment with Jung is extremely compelling. Jung, as you know, introduced two vital concepts beyond the Freudian personal unconscious. He talked about the personal layer, yes, but also a much deeper layer, the collective unconscious.
The collective unconscious, inherited, not learned individually.
Exactly. Jung described it as containing the entire species' ancestral experiences, our shared psychic heritage, expressed through universal symbols, the archetypes.
That sense of inherited material, a massive repository of transpersonal information that aligns perfectly with alaya's function as the storehouse for accumulated multi-lifetime karmic seeds.
It really does. Alaya provides the detailed, ancient philosophical mechanism for how that kind of deep inherited material could be stored and passed on across generations, or in this case, lifetimes.
It's like the operating system beneath the individual programs.
And while Jung's model isn't explicitly about literal rebirth in the Buddhist sense, the structural function is remarkably similar. An inherited, foundational reservoir of accumulated potential and patterning that shapes our underlying personality, supporting the temporary self or ego built by manas on top.
And Maslow's humanism fits in there too.
Yes, because humanistic psychology emphasizes the inherent subjective experience, the drive towards self-actualization, the idea that there's a deeper potential within us, which implies tapping into something beyond the immediate ego, something like this fundamental soul self, the potential stored within alaya.
Okay, so alaya holds the mixture. Impure seeds, pure potential, all the karma. Then the highest level, the ninth consciousness, amala, must represent the purification of all that, the pure potential realized.
Exactly. Amala is the pure consciousness, sometimes called immaculate consciousness. It's the ninth. And it's understood to be derived from the undefiled ingredient that was already present within alaya itself.
So it's not something totally separate, but the inherent purity within the storehouse finally accessed.
That's the idea. It is the fundamental basis of the human psyche that is intrinsically, primordially pure and uncontaminated. It's totally free from all those karmic impurities stored in alaya, free from the kleshas generated by manas. Utterly clear.
This sounds like it moves way beyond even the soul concept of alaya, which was still tied to rebirth and karma.
It does. Amala doesn't form the temporary self, ego manas, or even the continuous soul seed, alaya. It forms the eternal self or non-self.
Non-self.
Yes, the realization of ultimate reality, which is empty of inherent separate existence. Its quality is referred to as the spirit of cosmos. It's unity awareness.
So this must be an incredibly high level of awareness, suitable only for, what, Buddhas? Perfected being.
That's what the texts say. Those who are completely liberated from all hindrances, all obscurations.
Which is why Amala forms such a perfect concordance with the fourth psychological force.
Groff's Transpersonal Psychology.
Right. The first three forces were kind of contained, weren't they? Behavior, the personal ego, even the collective unconsciousness of Jung. The fourth force is crucial because it deliberately expands that conventional framework.
Massively expands it. It specifically exists to address higher human functioning or consciousness, things the other forces couldn't really handle.
Exactly. Transpersonal psychology dives right into states that literally transcend the personal ego. Mystical experiences, peak experiences, spiritual emergencies, cosmic consciousness.
Altered states, near-death experiences.
All the things that Manas, the ego, and maybe even standard Freudian analysis could never fully explain or treat effectively within their own limited frameworks.
Precisely. The fourth force honors that entire spectrum of human experience, ranging all the way up to what it calls a spiritual wisdom level. It explicitly recognizes the existence of a deeper, true, or authentic self, which resonates strongly with the Buddhist concept of non-self lying beyond the constructed ego of Manas.
It validates studying these non-ordinary states of consciousness as essential, not just weird anomalies.
Yes. And the ultimate proof, perhaps, of this concordance between Amala and the fourth force is their shared defining characteristic.
Legit.
Both Amala consciousness and the core focus of the fourth force are specifically characterized by the transformation from consciousness to wisdom.
Ah, okay. It's not just about being conscious at a higher level. It's about that consciousness becoming wisdom. The highest function isn't just knowing things. It's realizing truth directly.
Exactly. Realization. And look at the progression in the West. Psychology evolved through these clear stages. First, focusing only on external reactions matching mono, then understanding the internal conflicts and neuroses of the ego matching manas, then realizing the deeper, collective, inherited dimension matching alaya, and finally acknowledging the potential for transcendent states, for unity, for wisdom matching amala.
That historical progression in the West really does seem to perfectly mirror the ancient Buddhist stratification of the mind's layers. Mano, Manas, Alaya, Amala, force 1, 2, 3, 4. It's uncanny.
It's a powerful structural argument.
What's really profound here, I think, is that the Yogacara model, this 9 consciousnesses system, it isn't just a descriptive map of how the mind is. It's also a prescriptive guidebook. It shows a path for spiritual evolution.
Absolutely. Buddhism, particularly this school, starts by investigating the nature of human experience, precisely to identify the inner causes of suffering, like manas and its kleshas, and to uncover the possibility of genuine freedom.
And by laying out this map, it arguably provides Western psychology with a potentially radical new framework, doesn't it? A new epistemological frame, especially by positing Amala, pure wisdom, as the ultimate potential, the ultimate goal.
It certainly challenges the goals of mere adjustment or symptom reduction. The ultimate goal here isn't just mental stability or having a functional ego. The goal is the complete transformation of the entire psychological architecture.
The total overhaul.
And our sources detail how this happens. There's this final, highest spiritual practice described, often called the sublimation pathway. It involves the sequential conversion or sublimation of these instinctual and diluted states into higher psychodynamic wisdom states.
Okay, let's trace that transformation pathway. It starts with the basic input and moves progressively inward, purifying things as it goes.
That's the model. The raw sensory data coming into the level 1 senses that gets sublimated and organized by mano, the 6th consciousness.
Okay, raw data becomes ideas via mano.
Then mano's constant processing, its ideas and concepts, they get sublimated and internalized by manas, the 7th.
Ideas become part of the self-concept via manas.
But then crucially, manas's egoic clinging, its delusion and kleshas are ultimately dissolved or sublimated into the deeper karmic continuity of alaya, the 8th.
The problematic ego structure dissolves into the underlying karmic flow.
And finally, alaya's mixed seeds, the stored karma, both pure and impure, are themselves purified and sublimated into the ultimate state. Amala, the 9th consciousness, pure wisdom.
And this final stage, how is it achieved?
Often through very rigorous, specific meditative practices. The sources mention things like the 2-step practice of Mahamudra as an example. It's this final breakthrough, reaching Amala, where the inherent wisdom, the wisdom of the Dharma realm essence, breaks through the confines of the individual mind structure.
So this breakthrough to Amala isn't just arriving at the final level, it actually completes the whole Dharma gateway. and it initiates the transformation of all the lower, previously functional consciousnesses into specific forms of ultimate wisdom.
Yes. It's not just Amala that's wisdom. Realizing Amala transforms everything beneath it. This transformation represents the 5 essential qualities of Buddhahood. It's vital to see how each original consciousness is purified into its corresponding wisdom.
Okay, let's connect those. You have the 5 wisdoms mapping back to the consciousnesses. Where do we start?
Let's start from the deep end, with the 8th consciousness, Alaya, the storehouse.
Right. What does it transform into?
Alaya transforms into the great, perfect, mirror-like wisdom. Think about it. Alaya was the storehouse, passively reflecting everything, both pure and impure karma.
Okay.
The mirror-like wisdom is its purified form. It's the capacity to perfectly, clearly reflect reality exactly as it is, but with no distortion, no clinging, no judgment, no storing of new impure seeds, just pure reflection.
That makes beautiful sense. The memory bank becomes a perfect mirror.
Okay.
Next, let's look at the purification of the main troublemaker, Manas, the 7th consciousness, the ego, defined by clinging and dualism.
Manas transforms into the equality wisdom.
Equality wisdom, how so?
Where Manas previously insisted on that harsh separation between I and other, which led directly to attachment, wanting things for I, and hatred, rejecting things that threaten I.
Right.
The equality wisdom realizes the fundamental non-dual nature of all things. It sees the inherent Buddha nature or potential in all beings as equal. It dissolves the very dualisms that Manas was built upon. It's the complete antidote to the kleshas.
The root of suffering transformed into the wisdom of non-separation. Powerful. Okay, what about Mano, the 6th? The monkey mind, the ideating consciousness that was always processing, always a bit unstable.
The 6th consciousness, Mano, transforms into the discrimination wisdom, or sometimes called discerning wisdom.
Discrimination, doesn't that sound negative?
Not in this context. Where Mano was previously prone to being unbalanced, swayed by sentiment or perception, this transformed state allows for perfectly clear, precise, instantaneous discernment. It can distinguish between phenomena flawlessly, understand concepts perfectly, without getting attached to the distinctions it makes. It's pure cognitive clarity without the wobble.
Ah, okay. Clear seeing without the emotional reaction or the clinging. And even the foundational senses. Level 1.
Even level 1 transforms. The 5 sensory consciousnesses, eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, they collectively transform into the accomplishment wisdom, or all-accomplishing wisdom. Yes, the wisdom of perfected action and fulfillment. This represents the complete integration of that pure perception back into interaction with the physical world. It allows the enlightened being to act effortlessly, spontaneously, and perfectly for the benefit of all beings, using the senses fully, but without being trapped or deluded by them.
Wow. Perfect action arising from perfect perception.
And finally, underpinning all of this, the realization of Amala itself is synonymous with realizing the wisdom of the Dharma realm essence, the fundamental nature of reality itself.
This entire structure, this transformation, it defines the ultimate freedom, doesn't it?
That is absolutely the destination, according to this philosophy. Residence in the Pure Land, the land of Tathagatas, a state completely free from any form of suffering, free from all hindrances.
And the sources specify different kinds of hindrances.
Yes, critically, they detail 2 main categories that get eliminated. First, kleshavarana. That translates roughly as the hindrance of passions or afflictions, basically, the kleshas generated by manas.
The emotional obscuration.
Exactly. And second, jayavarto. This is the hindrance related to knowledge or deluded wisdom. These are the more subtle cognitive obscurations, the residue of ignorance that affects even the alaya level.
So both the emotional and the cognitive blocks are removed.
Completely. And maybe most importantly, this total transformation ensures freedom from the endless karmic cycles of samsara.
Yeah.
That circulation of life and death driven by the impure seeds stored in alaya.
Yeah.
By purifying alaya itself into the mirror-like wisdom, the very engine of compulsive rebirth is switched off. Done.
This is war relation.
The philosophical implication is massive. This process offers not just an explanation, but a potential resolution for every single level of psychological and spiritual functioning. It's a map not just of what we are, but potentially what we can become.
You know, what really stands out most profoundly for me in this whole deep dive is just that structural congruence. It's quite stunning. Western psychological history seems to have unfolded by moving from the outside in. First observable behavior, then inward to ego conflict, deeper still to collective inheritance, and finally reaching towards transcendence.
Behavior, ego, collective unconscious, transcendence. Forces 1, 2, 3, 4.
And that progression is an exact echo, step by step, of the ancient Buddhist stratification of the mind laid out millennia ago.
Yeah.
Mano, Manas, Alaya, and Amala.
It really serves as a tremendous philosophical validation for both systems, in a way. While Western psychology often started by seeking to explain and treat the mind-body correlation, maybe focusing initially on pathology and stabilization.
Right, fixing what's broken.
Buddhism, or at least this school, sought to investigate the mind primarily to realize freedom from suffering itself, starting with what it saw as the mind's essential structural blueprint. The concordance suggests they were both mapping the same territory, just perhaps with different initial aims.
And that integration provided by the fourth force, by transpersonal psychology, seems so vital here.
Yeah.
Because it formally validates the study of what used to be dismissed non-ordinary states of consciousness.
Exactly. Mystical states, cosmic experiences, the whole psycho-spiritual dimension. These are no longer just fringe phenomena.
In this framework, they become understandable, even predictable expressions of the higher consciousness, Alaya and especially Amala, operating beyond the normal grasp of the ego of Manas.
And the entire journey described, from Manas up to Amala, presents a really powerful philosophical challenge, I think, to a lot of contemporary thought, especially therapeutic thought.
How so?
Well, we noted earlier that Manas, the seventh consciousness, the equivalent of the Freudian ego, more or less is fundamentally defined in this system by diluted awareness and by clinging upadana.
Right. Its very nature is problematic from a liberation perspective.
And we also noted that many modern therapeutic models, perhaps less so now, but certainly historically, were often dedicated to strengthening that very self or ego structure, making it more robust, more functional.
Building a healthy ego.
So here's the provocative thought. If the ultimate goal, according to this Amala concordance and the whole Yogacara philosophy, is realizing the eternal self or non-self through the dissolution of that very clinging ego, what does it really mean for our definition of mental health? Especially if the therapeutic focus remains primarily on reinforcing the very structure that this ancient wisdom tradition identifies as fundamentally spiritually diluted.
That's the core tension, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is the goal adaptation or transformation? Are we polishing the chains or unlocking them?
It really raises a profound question about the true nature of ultimate liberation versus, say, functional adaptation. If the Manas ego is the engine of suffering, as this model suggests, is the deepest form of mental health achieved not just by helping the ego cope better with reality, but by actually transforming the underlying consciousness completely, dissolving the ego into wisdom.
It certainly demands we rethink what the true endpoint of psychological and maybe even spiritual development really looks like.
That is the ultimate provocative challenge, I think, that emerges when you successfully bridge the personal mind and the cosmic consciousness, as this framework attempts to do.
A lot to think about.
Indeed. We certainly hope this deep dive into the potential blueprint of consciousness has given you something substantial to reflect upon and perhaps explore further on your own.